the word for crisis is the same word as opportunity, and I think the lawyers can benefit from that, not in that kind of cynical cashing in kind of way, but there's big, ugly problems to get your hands around, and they're the really interesting bits of work to do. But the most important thing I did out of all of that was talk about it to my wife. And, you know, it's a cliche, you know, just talk about it, and then men don't talk about stuff and things. But they don't. I think that's probably the case for most GCs, most people in senior legal roles, that you've got there because you have delivered. So don't assume that you couldn't go and deliver somewhere else, but just acknowledge that it's going to take time. Firstly, I'm really pleased that we're allowed to swear, but I'm going to try and restrain myself as best I can, just in case my mum listens to me.
I actually do want to ask, how did you feel finding out that you were in the top 5 LinkedIn influencers? Like, did it just come through as like an email? Did they call you?
So Simon Marshall will get in touch with you if you're one of the few the night before, and he'll say, congratulations, this is where you've ranked, here's a badge for you to use and things, but it's embargoed until the morning. So that was a real surprise. And I said to Simon, I'm really surprised that that's my ranking. And he said, why? Which I think probably is a common experience for lots of the people who have ranked in those reports, because most of us don't do it because we want to rank. I mean, I do joke with some colleagues that I didn't wake up one morning and say I wanted to be a social media influencer, but now I'm in the game. I don't want to let it go. Inherently competitive lawyer, but it's something that people have been experimenting with over a long time to try to find their voice. And when I started to get some recognition, and I have a reasonably small following actually on LinkedIn, but I think I've been able to use my voice to have a bit of a broader impact, particularly around parenting and the role of the GC, and also quite specifically about what it's like to work in higher education.
You've been in Loughborough, you had 3 roles, was that right? Like, how long have you actually been there for?
So about 8.5 years. So I went to Loughborough having sort of fallen out of love with the law. I didn't think I wanted to be a solicitor anymore. And I'd had a couple of points in my career before Loughborough where I thought, I don't think this is for me. I'll just go and try something else over here. And if I like it, then great. And if I don't, then I'll go and do something else. And when I went to Loughborough, I went as a role called Head of Contracts. It was a new role that I was sorting out essentially their research and development contracting, trying to put processes and policies and things in place. But I ended up accidentally working for somebody who was married to a solicitor. So he was like, I know what lawyers can do. I'm going to throw some other projects in your direction, because there was no in-house legal team at Loughborough at the time.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of evolutionary that we got to the point where in 2019, we were asked to set up the first in-house legal team. And I took on the head of legal services role. And then as we became more embedded in the business in 2023, I became General Counsel, not because I was waiting for somebody to go, but because there'd never been a recognition that they needed somebody to provide legal support and guidance at that level previously. 3 roles, 8.5 years, a huge amount of opportunities I've been offered there. It's been brilliant. It's an amazing place to work.
Do you feel like, because you said that when you went into it, you had kind of fallen out of love with being a lawyer, and obviously in-house is very different to private practice, but do you feel like you now feel more in love with being back in the law profession, like as a result of Loughborough?
Yeah, it proved to me that it's not necessarily the law, it's about the environment and the context that you're working in. And I worked previously in local government, had a couple of roles in local government, and really enjoyed a lot of it, but I needed a new challenge, and I needed to move to an environment where I could stretch some different muscles. And higher education, it's unique. Everybody thinks they're unique, right, or that they're special, but there's bits of local government in them, there's bits of private law, there's bits of public law, there's bits of commercial R&D, property. It's a real and regulatory. It's a real mix of stuff, and it makes it really challenging and really interesting as well.
I was about to say probably really interesting, like can't get bored if there's always something new, kind of like every day coming in your
There's definitely
direction.
no opportunity to get bored. Higher education's never been in a more challenging position than it is at the moment. It's well documented. Universities closing courses, looking to merge, and so on. But with that, it's the proverb, isn't it? That the word for crisis is the same word as opportunity, and I think the lawyers can benefit from that, not in that kind of cynical cashing in kind of way, but there's big, ugly problems to get your hands around, and they're the really interesting bits of work to do.
Why is the education sector kind of going in that direction at the moment?
So there's a couple of different answers to that. Some would say it's the funding model, and my boss always uses the Freddo chocolate bar as an example. So that
I love those. I had one today, actually.
we have the off-brand ones from a popular discount supermarket at home because they're about the right size for my daughter. So back before we had regulated tuition fees, Freddos were 10p. Now Freddos are 25p, I think. They're quite a lot more than they used to be. But the cost of providing an education for a student has gone up hugely, just the same way the price of a Freddo has. But the funding that comes into higher education to support that doesn't reflect that at all. And the expectations on universities have grown and grown and grown, which produces an administrative burden, a regulatory burden, all of which needs supporting, all of which costs money, but that money isn't flowing into universities in the way it did. There are a couple of other angles to it as well, in terms of if you think about kind of a university in the 30s, 40s, or 50s, you think about tweed jackets, leather arm patches, elbow patches, and people never leaving the university. They go to the university and it's all very kind of old fashioned. Over time, university has become a product that people buy. The Consumer and Markets Authority regulate universities on from a competition law perspective to make sure that we offer what we say we're going to offer to students. We then have the Office for Students, who has some regulatory enforcement responsibilities on that. We're also regulated, or we have to comply with Charity Commission guidance, and some universities are charities too. So you've got this real kind of evolving mix of stakeholders, all with slightly different interests, which have just kind of existentially stretched universities to breaking point, I think.
Gosh, it sounds. I need to stop using the word hectic, but being South African, I can't. It's in my DNA. Everything's it is hectic, and that I think constitutes hectic. I know that you're moving to Knots at the end of this month, or is it at the beginning of December?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! How are you feeling about that? Because you're like, we're talking about kind of, I don't want to say the shit show that is being in higher education right now, but it is sounds a little bit crazy. But you're obviously staying in higher education. You're moving to something a little bit different. But what was kind of, why? Yeah. Why did you decide to move?
So firstly, I'm really pleased that we're allowed to swear, but I'm going to try and restrain myself as best I can, just in case my mum listens to this. So I genuinely, I would say this at this point, wouldn't I? Because I'm on record, but this is true. I have had a brilliant time working at Loughborough, and I've got loads of opportunities out of it, and I think they've got a lot of value out of me. But I've reached a stage where I could stay at Loughborough for a really long time, or I could broaden my experience and my horizons a bit. And I really love the sector. I love working with people who are incredibly clever, so much brainier than I am in our academic activities and in the professional services. But there was a limitation of what would be coming across my desk if I stayed at Loughborough. So it's become the right time for me to go and explore what it would be to work at a different university with a slightly different context. So Nottingham have a medical school, Loughborough don't. Nottingham have 2 foreign campuses, and Loughborough is based in Loughborough, and also we have a campus in London. So there's some complexities that come with that, as well as this broader like change and challenge in the sector too. It's a bigger team at Nottingham. It's twice as big as the team that I've got at Loughborough at the moment. So again, slightly different challenges, bit of stretch for me, and the chance to go and hopefully take some of the good stuff that we've done at Loughborough and spread it to another university.
How did Loughborough take it? It feels like a breakup, but how did it feel like telling them? Was everyone quite understanding? I imagine people would be quite sad, but
I think there's been a bit of sadness. There's been it's very topical, obviously, because Celebrity Traitors is on the Beeb at the moment, but I have been called a traitor more times a day than I think perhaps in my entire life. But it's always done with but we'll miss you. I think because there's a real sporting rivalry between Loughborough and Nottingham as well. So obviously
I actually did notice that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. Having worked at Loughborough as long as I have done, you'd think I would know that, but I wasn't as aware of it until the point at which I'd made it public that I was leaving. And then several people said to me, it would be fine if you were leaving. We wouldn't be happy about it, but it would be fine, except for the fact that you're going to Nottingham. That's just so much worse.
It just can't be Nottingham.
No, no. I think it all just comes from a place of good sportsmanship-like conduct. So I will miss a lot about Loughborough, but the people is what's really important about and what sets Loughborough apart. I think it's a place to work, and I hope I get, if only I get half of the brilliant interactions that I've had at Loughborough when I go up to Nottingham, I'll be happy.
Well, at least you'll get to see everyone from Loughborough, I'm sure, on the sporting field, probably throwing eggs in your direction or something.
When I stop wearing the corporate colours of African Violet on behalf of Loughborough, I suspect that I'll be a persona non grata, particularly if I wear the green and gold, which is the colours of Nottingham.
Oh, that is so funny. You obviously love your role at Loughborough and you love the people there and the environment there and kind of that whole dynamic. What would you kind of say to other GCs that are thinking about making a step that you're making? It's a very big risk kind of going into something that's very unknown from something that is very good. And, the typical saying of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So this has not been an easy decision to make. It's something that I've thought about over a long period of time. I was coached by a friend and colleague who said, make sure you interview them. Don't let them just interview you. Make sure that it's right, because I had no need to go anywhere. As you were saying, I could stay at Loughborough, be very happy there for a good period of time. It wasn't broken. But another friend said to me years ago that you have to look at these opportunities as they present, and you have to give yourself the benefit of the doubt to go and have a look at those things. Don't assume A, that you're not going to get them, or B, that it won't be as good as what you've got. I'm going to Nottingham and I've made this change because it will be, it's almost to prove whether I can do it or not. It is a stretch move. It's going to present challenges that I haven't had to deal with at Loughborough. When I had a conversation with my boss about this recently, when I was having a little bit of have I done the right thing? She said to me, well, there's nothing that we've thrown at you in your 8 years at Loughborough that you haven't dealt with. So probably deal with it at Nottingham. And I think that's probably the case for most GCs, most people in senior legal roles, that you've got there because you have delivered. So don't assume that you couldn't go and deliver somewhere else, but just acknowledge that it's going to take time. Like, I'm not going to know where to get a cup of tea from for the first couple of weeks. I'm not going to know where to park the car. I'm not going to know who the right person to call in the marketing team is because I need to just bounce something off them. That stuff's going to take time, and I'm going to have to really rein myself back in around that. And I suspect around that expectation, that I should just know this stuff because I knew this stuff where I was before.
Yeah. And the expectations thing is really interesting because I think you always naturally have expectations about anything that you're going into, but it can be a bit of a shooting yourself in the foot thing if you're expecting it to be even the same, if not better. But when you spoke about how you've been presented with challenges throughout being at Loughborough and you've overcome them and you've kind of grown with your role and with your positions, if you had to kind of envision yourself like walking in as a contract lawyer on your first day at Loughborough to like leaving at the end of very soon, actually, but yeah, in a few weeks' time, what would you say the things that you've learned the most in that time at Loughborough was?
I think my biggest bit of learning, aside from like the technical skills and the understanding of what it means to work in higher education, I've learned what to worry about. I think when I started out, having come from an environment that I think made me feel a bit anxious, I hadn't been able to calibrate what was important. And over time, in the workplace and probably at home as well a bit, over time, I've learned to work out which bits I need to worry about and which bits I don't. I don't get worried about everything that comes across my desk. I make a judgment quickly as to whether it's important or not. And if I don't think it's that important, I take a proportionate view at it and I move on and worry about something else. We all take a bit of work home with us each evening. We're not multiple different people that switch off one at one point and switch on another. But I think I take a lot less stuff home with me now than I used to, because I've learned which bits I need to worry about.
Obviously, on social media and on LinkedIn, I've been following you for a long time. You're very open about talking about men's mental health within the sphere and your own experience with mental health struggles. And would you say that, like, bringing home work all the time, was that a big impact to the struggles that you've been through?
So I don't think I really thought about my mental health at all until I became a dad. But when I look back, I can see that I would work too hard. I would lay awake at night worrying about things. I didn't have a healthy outlet for some of that. And so it was, I would work, I would do long hours, and lots of lawyers do long hours. But those long hours were not just the ones that were sat in front of the laptop. They were the ones that were spent whittling and worrying about things and not having any kind of respect for my own boundaries. And actually, in some respect, the pandemic, in moving to working from home, and my wife was furloughed, so she was at home the whole time, moved me to a space where I actually probably started to reset my boundaries a bit more. And I think a lot of people seem to have done that during sort of 2020 and 2021, those who didn't have caring responsibilities in particular, because a lot of those people during that period of time were busy homeschooling or trying to do a full-time job while trying to look after little people or what have you. But when I became a dad, well, when my wife fell pregnant, she was quite poorly, and had a bit of a rough pregnancy. So I did then become kind of carer. It would be disingenuous of me to say that I was her full-time carer for the whole time she was pregnant. I wasn't, but I was trying to keep everything ticking over at home and make sure that she was okay, as well as trying to do a full-time job. And it's not just doing the job, it's leading a team, it's being there for their challenges as well and helping them navigate through those. So when you're in a leadership role, you take a little bit of your team's problems with you too. And so I felt sort of an acute pressure to keep trying to show up for everybody equally. And that only became more acute after my daughter was born. So Lottie's 4 now, and she's amazing and demanding and all of those things that kids are. But for those first couple of years, as a dad, there was only so much I could do. She wouldn't really take a bottle from me. She didn't want me for comfort, because a lot of babies don't. They go to mum, right? Mum is the primary carer. And whether that's a natural thing or a societal thing or not is a bit of a moot point really at the moment, or for these purposes. But I remember trying to be everything and trying to be an engaged dad, trying to be at work, being a team leader, contributing to the university more broadly, and trying to be a caring husband and co-parent. And I can remember absolutely losing it with the sterilizer once, because I think I'd emptied and filled this sterilizer, I don't know, a dozen times that day, and I was just like, this is rubbish. This can't be how it should go. But I then felt this anger bubbling up in different places, and I'm not an angry person. I have feelings, right? Everybody's got them, but I do remember trying to hang the washing out once, and the retractable washing line coming off the wall in my hand, and I just lobbed it across the garden, and it smashed into a million pieces or what have you. And then just coming in and my wife being like, is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. But you sort of, that was wearing me down over time in a way that I didn't realize. And when I first decided to share about my challenges with mental health, I was already on the road to recovery, but I reflected on it when we were on holiday. I think my daughter she was sort of 18 months, 2 years, maybe something like that. And we were in this beautiful place. Like, so my wife used to work for British Airways, so we have these lovely privileges that mean that we get to go to exotic places and it doesn't cost us the earth, and we'll keep doing that for as long as we can. So we were in this lovely hotel, lovely place, and it was like all the colour had been sapped out of everything for me. I couldn't enjoy it, and I realised at that point. And I think having actually been away from the home environment and having that space helped. And I said to my wife, I'm going to go see a counsellor when we get home. I'm not right, and I don't know why I'm not right. And over a period of a couple of years now, I take sertraline, like a very large number of people in the population. It's more common than people think. I'm not seeing a counsellor at the moment, but I have one on speed dial for the days that I need it. I have made changes to my diet, my sort of lifestyle. But the most important thing I did out of all of that was talk about it to my wife. And it's a cliche, just talk about it, and that men don't talk about stuff and things, but they don't. And I've been so pleased to have seen, since I've been in the workplace, a real shift around the conversation about well-being, and a willingness for people to be their authentic self at work, bring their whole self to work, and say, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to be over here doing my work and I'm having a really good time of it, but also I might actually have some mental health challenges that I need to deal with, or I might be neurodiverse and I need to either talk to you about what that means for how we interact, or I want to celebrate what difference that brings to the role. So I think that there's a lot of factors that have played into me feeling comfortable sharing in that way. And part of it is the legal linked influencers ranking system, which has kind of brought a group of people together who are talking openly and honestly about personal challenges as they play into work, as well as professional challenges, which has made it feel like a safe space to share. And I'm very grateful to people like Patrick McCann and Helen Burness, who are very open and are very candid about their health and about their profession, and have kind of emboldened me, if you like, to keep talking about it. So
I think that it's something that you said that was really interesting, is I thought the thing of like, work doesn't end when you clock off, when you close your laptop. If you're spending 8 hours additionally worrying about stuff and not being present in your own life. But was it through talking to those people that you were able to set better boundaries with work? Did you do anything that you were like, I need to step back away from this a bit more? Like, how did you start to do that a bit more?
So when I was when I was on my pat leave, because I was really lucky, I had 4 weeks shared parental leave. So in total, I had 6 weeks off after my daughter was born. But during that period, I volunteered to join 2 committees in voluntary roles. I joined the school governors in the village, and I joined the Association of University Legal Practitioners on their executive committee. And it was interesting. I was listening to the Mel Robbins podcast. I don't know if you've come across.
Is she the let them theory woman?
That's the one.
Yeah.
She talks about one of her episodes is about the difference between stress and overwhelm. And I was definitely stressed before that point, and I became overwhelmed after that point because I put too many things on myself. I said yes to too many different things, and that's a neural pathway of mine that I've identified that I need to watch, because I will always say yes to stuff, and I want to kind of like contribute to stuff and have the conversation, take the meeting or take the coffee or what have you. And that's because it's a good thing to do, to connect to other people and to create opportunities and things. But what I have learned is that I'm not letting anybody down if I say no. And while I will be apologetic about it, if somebody asks me to do something and I know that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back at any particular point, I will now set some boundaries in a way that perhaps I didn't used to. And that's at home as well as at work, you know, in terms of like social engagements and things. I'm lucky to have some friends who are still in the area, some of whom are parents, and some of whom aren't, and we've all got slightly different pressures in our lives, but we're all very respectful of each other's demands as they fall on us. So it's, you know, it's okay to say I'm not okay. It's okay to say I can't come to that because I think my head will explode. And then with work, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. I've now learned what to worry about a bit more. So there are sort of things that come in that I just go, it's not that it's not my problem. It's just that I just don't need to worry about that because I'm confident somebody else will. And if they don't, we'll deal with it, because actually there are some things over here which are on fire and that really do demand my attention.
How did you begin to, like, I know that it's not quite, there's no switch. If it was, it would be easy for everyone to do. But how did you start to like switch off from those when you had something come on your desk and did you just think like, I wonder today if I might try not worrying about this one?
I think part of it was around having having a team and trusting my team to be able to deal with things and know that they didn't need me involved in everything. And the other part of it is just bitter experience. You know, there's no better teacher than experience. And over time, you realise that actually that is going to be a massive time sink for me because of either the people involved or the nature of the queries. And actually, it's going to be very, very limited returns that we get off that. So it's calibration over time and experience, I think.
When you first kind of posted about it, how did it feel? Did it feel relieving or did it feel very, very nerve-wracking, kind of putting that into the ether of social media, I suppose?
So it was a bit of a weird experience, actually, because it probably, I don't know, maybe it didn't, maybe it seemed like the ramblings of a madman, but it probably read as one of my more considered posts. You know, there wasn't much humour in it or any, you know, there were no memes. I went for a run, so I'm not the sportiest person in the world, so I've definitely been working at the wrong university for the last 8 and a bit years for that reason. But I'd been out for a run. I was trying to take sort of control of my diet and my sort of health more broadly. And I do a lot of thinking while I'm exercising, and I think lots of people do. So, and actually, it's probably healthier for me to do that while I'm on a jog rather than it is for me while I'm trying to get to sleep at night. You know, what we were talking about before. And I'd got kind of an element of the post forming in my mind, and I thought, right, let me just write something. I didn't intend to post it, but got to the point with it where I was like, actually, I quite like this. I'm ready to share this. By that point, I'd talked to my best friend about it. My boss knew about it. I'd chatted to a couple of other people, but the circle had been quite small. I hadn't talked to my team about it or anything like that. And then I just kind of clicked send and then got in the shower and then got my daughter off to nursery and didn't really think about it. And that day I was in a like a leadership away day thing in our hotel. That's one of the hotels that we've got on campus. And a couple of people came past and stopped and said, colleagues, not strangers. I don't have that kind of reach.
Sam McGinty, the famous man.
Very same. They stopped and just said, your post was really powerful. Thank you. And kept moving. And I didn't really know what to do with that. I didn't know whether or not that was praise or whether it was connection or what it was, because I hadn't ever had a conversation about anything as personal with these colleagues. And then over time, I've had messages from colleagues. They've like dropped me a note on LinkedIn or on Teams or what have you, and they've said, thank you for showing your vulnerability. Thank you for talking openly about this. It really resonated with me. Or I'm a sertraline taker too. Do you want to go for a beer? And some people have just said, if you ever want to go to the student union pub and talk about holidays, so you don't have to talk about work for half an hour, just drop me a line. So there was a real of people saying it meant something to them. and other people just genuinely showing that they wanted to show me that they cared, or that they were available to help as well. So I didn't post it because I wanted to inspire people or any of the kind of self-aggrandizing language that one might apply to something like that. I did it selfishly for me. It was part of my healing process. I'm so pleased some good has come out of it in terms of it making other people feel comfortable sharing, or making them feel seen as well.
That's such a nice effect to have felt like such a nice turnaround from something that you struggled with to feeling like it's something that other people, as you said, it resonated, and now you can go to the pub 5 times a week and talk about all your holidays with BA Airlines. So
you joke about that, and it's certainly not 5 times a week because I have to do bedtime duty. But there's a bit of a standing joke going on between some of my team members and my PA that my last week at Loughborough is basically just one long trail of coffees and lunches with people. Now, I think that's perhaps just a symptom of having worked somewhere for a good stretch of time, not necessarily my LinkedIn influencer status. I still cringe when I refer to the LinkedIn influencer thing, because it's a game, right? And with all of these things, somebody in the background is making money off it, and it ain't me. But it's also produced some really lovely benefits as well. And, there are other work groupers. Are we using that word to refer to people who go to work groupers?
We can. For anyone listening, it's just people who've come to our event before at work group.
I don't know, work groupies doesn't feel like it's the same vibe, does it?
I actually love work groupies. I
okay,
want branded t-shirts with work groupies on it. But I think some people probably wouldn't openly call themselves a work groupie. But that's okay.
I'm happy to be a work groupie. That's fine. But there are other work groupies who are in the rankings too. But I think when you look at like that group of lawyers, and then the group of lawyers that you guys convene for the work group events, the vibe is always really good because people just want to therapize. They want to share with each other. They want to help. And I think it can be very lonely being in senior roles in any organization or any limb of an organization. And I think that comes back to what you were saying about the vulnerability bit. Most leaders don't want to make themselves vulnerable if they are, and I generously refer to myself as mid-management. There are several very much more senior people than me in my organization. And I know that my job title might seem scary to some people and things, but I'm at the point where I probably can be candid, because if I went much more senior, that vulnerability could be exploited by the people. I think that's the fear. And I think we're seeing a cultural shift, like you say, young people being much more prepared to talk about their mental health. But that needs to flow through over a couple of generations. And I don't think we're there yet, where people in the most senior roles, unless they're founders or people who are sort of untouchable, if you like. No one's untouchable, not in a kind of a sinister way, but they've got nothing to lose. So they can be super candid.
It's interesting that there's maybe a sweet spot in the middle where, as you said, you can afford to be a little bit more like, it's not going to maybe affect you as much. But yeah, it should definitely be something. I imagine if like everyone in the C-suite spoke about mental health. Like, I think organizations would do a whole 180-degree shift in terms of employee culture.
Yeah, and the conversations about well-being and having a well-being week and things that you see sort of lampooned in other organizations, that you don't have a well-being week, you don't have a mental health day. We are fully formed whole humans, and these things happen 365 days a year, and that's why having a culture where you can support, we're a genuinely supportive culture, and caring culture is what makes a difference. Actually, ultimately, it makes people want to stay in organizations for longer, unless you're nuts like me and you decide to actually jump ship from somewhere that actually feels very safe and very comfortable.
But it sounds so exciting. We spoke about kind of the biggest thing that you learned when you were at Loughborough, and that whole stepping away from things and learning when not to care as much. Is there something specific that you really hope that you're going to learn or develop when you're at Not?
I I think there's a continuation piece for me. So I'm going to be part-time when I start up at Nottingham. So I'm going to just have every other Friday off. And part of that is about boundaries for me, and being able to preserve that time for me and then my family. I might be able to take my little girl swimming after school on a Friday and things like that. But I'm I'm probably too old to use the expression side hustle. But when I get to kind of later in my career, I really want to explore, like a lot of GCs do actually, the portfolio career. So I would like to have some non-executive director roles and maybe some fractional GC opportunities and things like that. So I've made the conscious choice to carve a bit of time out to give me the flexibility to do that, whether that's to take on a trustee role or I'm talking at a conference in a few weeks' time, and if it's not a total car crash, I might try to do a bit more of that.
Is that the engineering, an engineering one?
Yeah, the slightly terrifying audience of 250 systems engineers.
What? So welcoming.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
But you know, that's another one that's come up through LinkedIn as well. So I posted something about opportunities, and one of my colleagues, who happens to be a professor of systems engineering, commented on it. I think he was taking the mick actually, but fair enough. I was sending myself up in that post. And then I get a message out of the blue saying, could we have a call? And I've got a bit of a soapbox, which I have climbed upon many a time at work group events, which is that in-house teams need to be more proactive about demonstrating their value and about talking about what they bring to the organization, both in terms of, you know, people talk about KPIs and stuff like that. I'm less worried about KPIs. It's more about storytelling and putting the human back into the work that you do as lawyers, and moving away from these stereotypes about the Department of No and blocking, and into actually what do you enable and what do you contribute to the business. So I'm going to talk to the Institute for Systems Engineers annual Systems Engineering Conference, very long title, in glamorous Ashford at the end of November. And I said yes, and then they told me they wanted me to talk for 40 minutes. Now, anybody who's made it this far through the podcast will be like, that's clearly sounds clearly capable of that. But on my own, I would run out of things to say normally. So we'll see how it goes.
Hilariously, when you said the word side hustle, all I could think about was you talking about the LinkedIn influencers, like profitability. And I was like, we need to get you some brand deals. Like I was thinking, I was like, we need to lean into this influencer. Like you can see the brand deals coming through the roof. It's going to be.
I just want to be clear. I've monetized absolutely nothing from my time on LinkedIn. I do keep joking that I'm going to like try and find some Amazon products I like and stick an affiliate link in, but I've never, to be honest, it's too much like hard work, and I suspect I'd probably have to shift about 1 million units for 50p, wouldn't I? So it's probably not worth it. But then that is one of the interesting things that the TBD marketing people do for the LinkedIn influencer stuff. They'll tell you how much your exposure on LinkedIn would have cost you if you'd taken that out as advertising and paid for advertising. So I'm not selling on LinkedIn, right? People can't come and buy services from me. It doesn't work like that. I'm doing it. I guess if you take that to its logical conclusion, I do it for purely egotistical reasons, but that's not really true. But I think this last year, if I had paid for the exposure that I've got through LinkedIn, it would have cost about $17,000.
Oh my gosh. How does it feel to have a $17,000 price tag then attached to your name?
Well, I can tell you it's quite underwhelming when you look at what the price tag is against some of the other legal linked influencers, but I'll take it, 17. But it's created that kind of opportunity to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. I had a call with somebody this morning who has done some amazing compliance work in the Wellcome Trust. So he's a lawyer by background, but he's been doing governance and compliance and policy stuff now for a while. And we've just got in touch over LinkedIn, and he said, shall we have a coffee this morning? And I said, yes, that would be lovely. And it was lovely.
I'm doing a lot of that lately, actually.
Yeah,
Perfect.
this is my time. If I'm not careful, I'll have to be rolled up the hill to Nottingham on the 8th of December.
You won't need to. You'll be so caffeinated. You'll fly up there. You'll literally have wings.
I know. I think I might present a bit more hyper before Christmas than I might after Christmas if that was the case.
Do you ever get nervous to post? Because you have quite a good regular posting cadence, but I feel like I don't post that often. To be honest, I'm not very good at it, but I get a bit nervous even when I'm posting something and it's not usually that personal.
So it's very timely you asking me this question, because I've just been going through this thought process this week. So being part of the rankings is lovely, and it creates, as I say, it creates opportunities. And posting on LinkedIn and having people engaging with you is a bit like any social media, right? That if somebody likes your post, you get a hit of some kind of chemical in your brain that tells you you're being validated. So that's a good thing. The quality of the conversations that you can have on LinkedIn with people is where the real value is derived. But it's so easy to allow yourself to be ruled by statistics. So I have a broad rule of thumb that I like to post 3 times a week. But there's been a lot of talk recently about a change in the algorithm that LinkedIn uses from a series of, I don't know the detail of this, it's too techy. I have been to a webinar about it, but I haven't retained all of it. But a series of different bits of algorithm that come together to work out what somebody should see on their feed. And now it's been replaced by this new large language model, Brew 360, which is going to kind of front and center expert content. So not the kind of personal content, but expert content. And there are ways that you can play the algorithm. And I sort of earlier in this week just went, yeah, the rankings is fun, but I'm not here playing a game. I don't want to worry this much about the statistics. To the extent that, and on the basis this will be broadcast when I'm safely back in the UK, going away next week on holiday, and I am taking LinkedIn off my personal phone, and I've switched all the email notifications off, and there will be no scheduled posts or anything like that. If it happens on LinkedIn while I'm away, doesn't matter.
I get you. Okay, my last question. There's been a few things. I think it's going to be hard for you to pick one, and you can feel free to say something that you've said already, because there's quite a few things we've touched on. But if you had a time machine and you could bump into yourself, first year university, and you could sit down and talk to him and give him a piece of advice, what is the type of thing that you would say?
Grow the beard as soon as possible. I left that far too late. No. But no, actually, I think it would have helped me. I think what I would be saying to myself is just work out what's important. Really think about what's important to worry about. So I had a lot of fun as a student, like a lot of students do, but I thought that I would going in a particular direction as a lawyer, and that direction as it manifested, I didn't really like it, because I was worrying about the wrong thing. If I'd have known what would be important to me, time with my family, my health, time with my friends, flexibility, and not feeling like I have to work from 7 a.m. until 11 at night, which I was like weirdly up for as a student, then I would have made different choices. But then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, which I'm really grateful for. I always think that the time machine thing, like apart from grow the beard early, is as early as I was able to, as a late bloomer, then you can't go back. And if you do go back, you are changing where you are now. And generally, that's where you're supposed to be.
That's such a nice way of looking at something, especially when you're in the thick of anything and just knowing like this will make sense at some point in the future. It's been so nice talking to you, and thank you so much for recording this with me. I would ask if people are listening and they want to talk to you and get in touch with you, where they can find you. But I think we all know that it's going to be LinkedIn. Let's keep Sam in the top 5. We have a reputation to maintain.
I think I've used my Sunday name. So I think if you search for Samuel McGinty, you'll get me and not an economics student in Chicago.
Awesome. I will also pop it in the description of this episode. But thank you so much. And we'll be releasing an episode every second Wednesday. So if you liked this one, keep eyes on LinkedIn and tune in for the next one. Thanks.